Hey, it's the Chief Bonnie with Board Games. We're doing a review of Europe Divided. Now, I was born in 1970, so I saw the end of the Cold War, and Gorbachev and Reagan prior to that saying, tear this wall down, and all of the very, from an American standpoint, very cool and exciting things that were going on in Europe. This game covers the two phases of the post-Cold War. You have that European, expansion, dominance. They're really flooding in. These countries that were part of the Soviet bloc are now wanting to join NATO, wanting to join the EU. All of this is going on. And you're going to be playing action cards in this on a beautiful map. I'll go in and I'll show you that in a second. And you're going to be using headline cards that are going to kind of direct your strategy, and you'll have a little bit of control over that, but not a lot. And then you're going to move through phase one into phase two, which is the Russian resurgence coming in, with Putin coming in and Russia not having as much power or money, but they're a little more nimble. They're willing to break the rules a little bit quicker. They don't have as much red tape to move through. So let me go in and show you a little bit more detail what's going on. I love the artwork in this game. This is a prototype copy, so everything you see, although it looks very final and nice to me, it's not official until it's official. So this is still prototype stuff. And by the way, not paid for this preview. But if you like anything I do at all, even if it's just the hats, or if you hate the hats, I do have a Patreon page. There's a few people on it. Helps me keep the shows coming. And again, not getting paid for this. Go take a look. All right, I want to start with the board because I love the design element of this board. I don't know the artist. I'm looking on the, nope, I don't see the artist listed. I love this. Now, again, I'm going to say we're going to pop up. I'll come back and talk about this in a second. We'll talk about that beautiful cover as well, Europe Divided. I want to say that everything here is prototype, but you can tell we're fairly far along. That being said, we don't need anything more here. I love the corona of the sun coming around the corner. The way it sets the palette tone, just visually, it's softer, but you got the green, which shows the EU and the green cards, and you got Russia that's going to be controlled by Russia and the red cards. And then the neutral areas are the areas you're going to be fighting over, coming right through this kind of blackened area and down into Georgia and the areas further down to the south here. The idea of using dice to show your influence as it comes up or down, I think, a lot of people even bling out other games with dice rather than having to fiddle around with counters. There's nothing better than being able to just move from 1 to 6 with a die and represent the color. So NATO is represented by blue, the EU by yellow, and of course Russia by the red. All right, a general overview. So the EU and its military arm NATO are trying to come in and push for influence and dominance, if they can get it up to 6, of the countries that are up for grabs now that Russia, the Cold War's over basically, and Russia's trying to hold on or reinstitute its influence. There are headline spots, so your turns are tracked here, and on certain turns, depending on what turn you're on, there are cards which have historical headlines, which you, get to see the forthcoming things that are happening, allowing you to drive your strategy within the game. And then there's triggers that'll slide these cards over into actually being the current headline. And then you'll draw, pan up, you'll draw new cards that come in, you've got hands of cards that you've drawn and filled in here. So you're able to manipulate some of the headlines that are going on. I'll zoom in on those in a bit too. All right, let's go over these action cards real quick. So the very first thing that's going to happen is both sides will take cards from their deck, 2 of them. They'll play them into the middle, and we'll determine who has the advantage. This is simply looking at these numbers down here, totaling them up, and the person with the higher number, 12, would get to go first. Russia will still get to go. The European Union or NATO is just going to get to go first. So what you're doing on your turn is associated with these actions all along here. And you have to pick just one, and it has to be from one of the two cards that you played. So let's take a look real quick. You can see, come on, come into focus here. All right. If I wanted to take a die, a yellow EU die, and put it into a country where I had no influence, it would cost me 2 coin, and I would put the die on the number 1 side. If I already had a die out on the board somewhere and I wanted to increase the influence, let's just say I'd had a 1 out there in the past, I could increase it by 4. Now you can see this one has increased by 2. Clearly not, if I wanted to do that, I wouldn't pick this card. I would want to go by 4. Money. Money, as you see, drives the placing of influence. In this case, it's going to drive the NATO influence being placed, building of armies, moving. So maybe I need some more coin. Probably don't want to go for 2. I'd want to just pick up 4 coin. That would be an option. Already kind of covered. Same as the EU, but if I wanted to put NATO influence, I could grab a blue die, put it on the 1, cost me 2. Same exact thing. If I wanted to increase the influence from 1, this would allow me to increase it up to 4. Again, 6 is dominance. 6 is good. Ideally, you could have a lot of dominance running around. That would be a good thing. The building of armies. So I could build an army in the country pictured, and it would cost me 2 coin. So over here, it would be France. And the key on where you build is that you might want to be a little closer to a hotspot that's going on, because I could also move an army that's on the board. The first movement adjacent is free. After that, it's going to cost me 1 of those precious coins, and I can move it over land or sea. And you can move them as far as you got the money to pay and spend on it. So the Russian cards are obviously almost identical. You're only going to be dealing with 1 color because Russia's just got the red. So what's interesting here, though, is you can see this card doesn't have a place influence. You can see one here, so I'd be able to do it for 2 coin. You can see I would probably, if I wanted to increase influence, I'd want to use this +3. Russia does not have as much money, but maybe I need one of these, so I might pick up a 1 coin. Again, building an army, moving an army works the same way, and you're seeing this for the first time. Some of the European cards have it as well. This means that the action I'm going to take, and I can only take 1 action, is the text on one of these 2 cards. And something that's a little bit different as well is the building of an army will be spelled out literally on the card. And then if I did this little tablet looking thing, that means take the action that's there. So in this case, military production, I can spend 3 coin. That's expensive for Russia, but I can then build 2 armies in the Volga Federal District. So it's very straightforward. The cool thing is as you pick up influence in these countries, you get to, let me find it, you get to grab the card out of the deck, so it feels, thematically correct that I've got influence here. I've got influence of 5 or a 6, heavy enough that I can now pull this card, which is neutral, and it's going to go into my discard pile. It'll get shuffled in, and then in the future, it's going to allow me to do these things, which might be really nice, or it may have this very good action text on it that I know I want. And therein lies some of the learning curve, because not only do you have the headline phases, which are up top that you can see what they are, and they're historical, but you also have some little historical, not little, some big historical things that are happening when you exert your influence over these other countries in Europe. So the turn track will occasionally tell you to resolve the headline phase. So you'll look up at the top. The Russians have maybe been able to get a headline in that they wanted to work towards. Maybe they're successful. I'll cover that in a second. Same deal, the EU's worked something in. Now, sometimes you might have a hand of cards that forces you to play a Russian headline. So in that respect, it feels a little bit like Twilight Struggle, where sometimes you're forced to put in cards that you don't necessarily want to trigger. So, but you may put it in and then make sure, or you may put it in because the Russian player, or vice versa, would have a very difficult time getting it to trigger. So the prestige that would be scored at the end of the game, and then the conditions. So if the EU has greater influence than Russia, they would take the card during the triggering headline phase. You can see here, Russia is going to need to have greater influence than NATO, and it has to have an army present. Let's pop out. I'll give some final thoughts. I can't say it enough. Visually, the board to me is awesome. I just love the 3D-ish feel and the way the corona of the sun is popping around the edge of the globe. It somehow portrays more of that globe, that world feeling. And I don't mean like, oh, we're all on a planet. Just the idea that this is real. I don't know why it does that. I mean, I lived through all this stuff. But on that note, living through it as an American, I was ignorant to a lot of the stuff that's going on in the game. I'm looking through and playing a little bit and reading some of these headline cards, and I'm like, huh, okay. And some I'm like, yeah, I remember that. Other ones I'm like, which is what I'm looking for in my board games, especially my military or war-ish. I hear people calling things waros. Maybe this is more of a waro. I found this game interesting when I first saw it because I'm thinking, oh, post-Cold War. So I've played Twilight Struggle, card-driven game. This has cards as well. It's different. It's not the same. It's not the same. But this idea that now we're going to be playing through and these two different phases after the Cold War is over. So the historical flavors there, those headline cards that are telling you these things happened, and by the way, if you want to take advantage or don't want XYZ to score prestige points for this person, you need to get in and do stop this, or get your influence here, or get an army in there, or get the Russian army out of there. I love that strategic play that's going on there, and the use of the cards and the options that are open for you, and then gathering in the cards from the countries that you then get influence or dominance in, and how it adds to your deck. So you've got this small little deck building deal too, because those cards go into your discard pile, you're shuffling, and you may need, oh, I need Belarus to come up because I know that card has XYZ and I wanted to do XYZ on that card, or I know there's this great text on that card and I really want to trigger that. So you've got all that regular game stuff that ties into the real life history stuff. Europe Divided. Check it out. Kickstarter's live June 10th. That could change, but as what I know now, it's June 10th. All right. Chief, see you guys. Europe Divided.